Listen, you are under arrest for a violation, okay? Do you understand? If you do not obey commands, force may be used against you. Do you understand?
On a quiet spring morning in Vancouver, Washington, Meshay Melendez and her young daughter Layla Stewart disappeared without a trace after leaving a friend's house. They got into the car of Kirkland Warren, Mesay's notorious ex-boyfriend with a dark past filled with violence and heinous crimes. Let's dive into the shocking details, conflicting testimonies, financial secrets, and fatal missteps of the justice system in this gruesome case. What is the cold truth behind the tragic deaths of mother and daughter? Who is truly responsible for this horrific crime? Meshay Melendez, 27, also known as Meshay, is a young single mother living in Vancouver, Washington. She is known for her independence, strength, and deep devotion to her daughter. On social media, Meshay often shares happy moments with Layla, especially in TikTok videos where the two dance and laugh together. However, Meshay has also lived her life without a fight. She had a rocky relationship with Kirkland Warren, who had a dangerous criminal history. Although she tried to distance herself from him, she remained entangled with him for a variety of reasons. In December 2022, Meshay called the police after Warren opened fire on the balcony of her apartment, but she later withdrew the charges, perhaps out of fear or pressure. Despite the challenges, her daughter has always been Meshay's priority.
Since last Sunday, since anybody heard, seen, or talked to my daughter and granddaughter.
I'm missing a whole part of me. That's my sister and that's my niece. We don't know where they're at.
Friends and family have stressed that she would never disappear without their knowledge, which makes her sudden disappearance even more suspicious. At only 6 years old, Layla Stewart is a smart, energetic, and loving child. At only 6 years old, she has a bright future ahead of her. She is a good student and behaves well. She often appears in her mother's TikTok videos to share happy moments with Meshay. Layla is not only the pride of her mother, but also the heart of the entire family. Her grandmother describes her as a sweet, cheerful girl who makes everyone around her laugh. The morning of March 12, 2023 was as quiet as usual in Vancouver, Washington. 27-year-old single mother Meshay Melendez and her 6-year-old daughter Layla Stewart were staying over at a friend's house. Around 5 a.m., Meshay and Layla walked outside. Nearby was a burgundy Dodge Charger driven by Meshay's ex-boyfriend, Kirkland Warren. This was the man who had previously been accused of domestic violence against her. To those around her, it seemed like a normal moment. Meshay had simply left with her daughter, perhaps to go home or run errands. No one knew that this would be the last time they would see her and Layla alive. From that moment on, no one ever heard from Meshay or Layla again. Meshay's phone had been silent for 6 days. Her mother spoke to her every day and she became increasingly anxious. She called and texted multiple times but received no response. Fearing something terrible had happened, Meshay's mother decided to report her missing to the Vancouver Police Department on March 18, 2023. Authorities quickly checked Meshay's apartment in hopes of finding clues to her whereabouts. However, when they arrived, they found the apartment empty. No sign of Meshay and Layla. Then the most shocking discovery came. Meshay's car was found abandoned near the Van shopping center, the same place she and Warren had spent the night before she disappeared. It was at that moment that I knew this was not an ordinary disappearance. Something terrible had happened to Meshay and Layla. When Vancouver police investigated the disappearance of Meshay Melendez and her daughter Layla Stewart, they quickly identified Kirkland Warren as the prime suspect. Not only was he the last person to see her alive, but he also had a history of domestic violence against Meshay. Kirkland Warren and Meshay Melendez had a tumultuous relationship, breaking up and getting back together frequently. It was not unusual for Meshay to remain silent for a while, and Warren claims he did not panic when she stopped contacting him. He insisted that after dropping her off, he went to a bagel shop and later to the home of another friend, Nettie. It wasn't until Meshay was officially reported missing nearly a week later that Warren began to pay attention. But by then it was too late. Warren grew up in Pine Bluff, Arkansas, the son of a municipal judge who resigned in 2009 after being accused of forgery, abuse of power, and attempted theft. Despite his father's decline, Warren did not choose a better path. Instead, he led a life of crime. In 2017, he was charged with first-degree murder after shooting Curtis Urquhart in the head and dumping his body in a ditch. Despite this, he was released on bail and fled to Vancouver, Washington to avoid facing trial. Once in Washington, he continued his schemes of deception and violence. In Vancouver, Warren Monet married Tyler Warren, a 26-year-old bank teller from Portland. The couple had 2 daughters, but their family life was far from normal. Monet was later implicated in a massive financial fraud case and was accused of stealing nearly $25,000 from customer accounts. But this seemingly isolated incident was closely linked to Meshay and Warren's complicated past. On November 21, 2022, Monet's bank information was used to change the account information of a credit union, stealing $20,000 and transferring it to an account in Meshay's name. Surveillance footage also showed Meshay opening an account at the credit union that same month, and then getting out of Monet's car. This suggests that Meshay and Monet knew each other and may have been involved in a criminal conspiracy together. Meshay was an active TikTok user who suddenly stopped being online after December 20th, 2022, around the same time that the theft occurred at the credit union. Was she trying to avoid detection while investigating? If Monet and Meshay were connected, who was behind the scam? When police questioned Monet, they quickly pointed the finger at Warren, saying she had changed bank accounts on Monet's orders and forced her to help him steal money. Meanwhile, Warren Monet said he was divorcing her, but his relationships with both women were far from over. Warren's criminal record went beyond fraud. He was a violent abuser. In early 2023, Warren and Meshay were not living in their own home, but at a friend's apartment for a very specific reason. Warren had a domestic violence restraining order against him. In December 2022, Meshay called 911 to report that Warren had assaulted her and shot at her apartment balcony. In February 2023, police corroborated their account with witnesses who were present during the attack. But just 2 weeks later, on February 17th, Meshay withdrew her allegations. She told authorities that she lied about the shooting, blaming it on mental health issues and substance abuse. Was she being silenced? Police found her sudden change of story suspicious. Then on March 2, 2023, Warren was arrested on the following charges: second-degree domestic violence, drive-by shooting, making false statements to police, harassment, possession of a stolen firearm. He was given a risk level of 31 on a scale of 1 to 18 to harm Meshay, meaning he posed a significant risk. Despite this, the court set his bail at $100,000 and issued a restraining order, rather than continue to detain him. Within hours of his release, Warren violated the order twice, calling Meshay from the Clark County Jail and telling her, "You're the reason I was arrested. You have to make sure these charges are dropped." Meshay promised to do her best. Later that day, Warren posted a bond and was released. But on March 6, 2023, the court dismissed the charges against him and denied GPS monitoring, meaning Meshay was still unprotected. No tracking device, the injunction was not enforced. No one could protect her from the man who was about to take her life. For victims of domestic violence, restraining orders are often a false safety precaution. And in Meshay's case, it was the equivalent of a death sentence. When Meshay and Layla disappeared, Warren was the first person police contacted. On March 19, 2023, authorities obtained a search warrant for Warren's house and vehicle and then arrested him for violating the restraining order.
Put your hands on top of your head and release your fingers.
Listen, you are under arrest for a violation, okay? Do you understand? If you do not obey commands, force may be used against you. Do you understand?
This gave the police the opportunity to interview him about Meshay and Layla.
So, I mean, I'm trying to gather leads, right? So if you were me, where would you go looking for, and again, if I find, I'm likely gonna find Meshay, right? So where do you think they're hiding out at? Where do you think would go? Where would she want to be?
I don't know. The only, and then like I said, again, I'm not trying to point fingers or anything. Her ex-husband literally took and wouldn't give her back for a couple days, and we had an issue with that. So
when was that?
this was like sometime last year, maybe. We had an issue with that. So
when was that?
this was like sometime last year, maybe.
Kirkland suggested that maybe Meshay's ex-husband had something to do with it, but the police had already visited him and determined that Meshay and Layla weren't with him. And unlike Kirkland, he didn't have an outstanding no-contact order against him.
Try not to get too involved in your other case, right? But like I said, I'm more interested in that little girl. Okay, that is, Meshay could be anywhere, right? But I mean, I'm sure you love that little girl like everybody else, right? I mean, that little girl got a lot of family, right?
Two of my own.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm telling you, I'm literally, when Meshay gave her brother the car, I'm the one that got up in the morning to take Layla to school every morning.
And you're kind of soft-spoken. Do you mind if I pull up a chair? Sweet, man.
It's no, I got a lot of shit I'm already dealing with, and this just makes everything worse.
Like what? Like your other cases?
Yeah.
All right.
Well, I only had one other case, and I've never ran from it. I've always been at every court date on time. I posted bail, never got in trouble since. This is the most trouble I've been in since.
Kirkland presented himself, if not as an upstanding citizen, then at least as one who was trying to do better and complying with the terms of his past run-ins with the law. But this wasn't true. There was something else the investigators knew about him, something that made him even more of a suspicious figure.
Where did you live before you lived here?
Arkansas.
On the morning of March 22nd, 2023, a resident walking down a remote street in Washougal, Washington, noticed two mannequin-like objects thrown into a ravine. As he got closer, however, it became abundantly clear to him. These were not mannequins, but human bodies. The resident panicked and immediately called the police. Police arrived on the scene within minutes. What they found confirmed their worst fears. The bodies of Meshay Melendez and her daughter Layla Stewart had been found. The bodies had been thrown down a steep slope, hidden in dense vegetation near a remote road. Meshay Melendez shot in the head, most likely dead instantly. Layla Stewart shot twice in the head with evidence of sexual abuse prior to the murder. Even more disturbing, Layla's body was found next to her kitten, a cruel reminder of the innocence in life she once had. After investigating the crime scene, the police determined that Meshay and Layla were murdered on the same day they disappeared. Their bodies were dumped here to cover up the crime. After this horrific crime scene, the police conducted a thorough investigation in Kirkland.
Do you think I'm here to judge you?
No.
Do you think I'm here because maybe God put me here?
You're here to do a good job.
Yeah. And what do you think that job is? To find them, right? Do you think maybe I have found them?
No.
You don't know?
I hope not.
Do you hope not?
Not in the way you think. Hope not in the way that I think you was about to say.
What do you think I'm about to say? Kirkland?
Just tell me you're okay.
I can't tell you that.
That's all I need to hear. Just
What
tell
do you
me
think?
okay.
Where do you think they are?
I don't know.
Kirkland, I'm here to ask about what actually happened. And I wouldn't be here having this conversation with you if I didn't think that maybe you'd want to talk about it.
I didn't do that.
You didn't do anything?
No, sir.
So So what did happen?
I don't know. I don't know where they are.
You don't know where they are?
I've been called and called.
I get it. Do you think that maybe that might be some denial?
No, sir.
Kirkland.
I've made my mistake before.
Okay, fair enough, man. I'm not here to about past
I
stuff.
don't run from it.
Then tell me about what happened to that baby.
I don't know.
You do know.
I don't.
Kirkland. I don't want to go down the road with all the stuff that I have on my phone. I want to hear it from a man. You're a man, right?
I am.
You're a man that maybe made a mistake, not a monster?
Not a monster. I made my mistakes in the past.
So tell me about the mistake that happened.
The one in Arkansas?
No, I don't. Not about that, man. Tell me about this baby.
I don't know.
Kirkland tried to bring the conversation back to his past charges, including the murder in Arkansas, but he'd already confessed to that. This was something new, and it displayed eerily similar hallmarks to the killing of Curtis Urquhart. They'd been shot in the head like Curtis and left in a ditch also like Curtis.
I was there. I was at the scene. I know what road you were off of. I know why there's mud on your car. I know why there's tire tracks down that little road that goes up where you turned around and went back. I know all that stuff. I don't need to know if you did it. Everyone wants to know why. And I think a man like you would at least give people the peace of mind of to at least know why.
I didn't do anything.
But this is your opportunity to at least tell your family why.
I told you I didn't know anything. Go over and return from that.
When the victim's body was found, police tightened their hold on Warren, but they needed solid evidence to finally convict him. They checked Kirkland Warren's house and car and found horrific puzzle pieces. First, blood and bullet casings in Warren's car. Forensic tests confirmed that Meshay and Layla's blood was found in Warren's Dodge Charger. The bullet casings found in his car matched the victim's gunshot wounds. This proved that the murders occurred in his car before he disposed of the bodies. On March 15, 2023, Warren transferred $4,200 from Meshay's account to his own. He used her phone to authorize the transaction, proving that he had access to her belongings after she disappeared. Between March 13th and 15th, Warren texted a friend asking if they knew of any remote places to bury a gun. This indicated that he was actively trying to cover his tracks. Warren was the last person recorded by surveillance cameras to be with Meshay and Layla. There is no video showing them getting out of his car alive. In addition, the police received a confession from Meshay's friend Joanne. On the morning of March 12th, she saw Meshay unconscious and half-dressed in Warren's car. At that time, Layla didn't know what happened. Joanne handed the little girl to Warren, believing that he was taking her to school, but he took her to her death. When the judge announced the verdict, there was silence in the courtroom.
And when Joanna Cardinal put her in the defendant's car, she had Rocky with her. And it's our hope that Rocky was the last thing that she saw at the time in which she passed this earth.
Our family has been torn apart by grief and the endless questions that haunt us every day. Why?
He a 7-year-old and then shot her and killed her.
You have judges that let him out, should never have let him out. You have a district attorney who gave him bail. Why would you give somebody bail who has this kind of a history?
Kirkland Warren, who took and destroyed a mother and her child, has been sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. He will spend the rest of his life in prison, never to walk free again. But is this really justice? Or is it justice that comes too late? For Meshay and Layla, the system had failed them long before the verdict was announced. The signs were there, the history of violence, the restraining orders that were ignored, the murder charges that should have kept Warren away. Yet he was always allowed to slip through the cracks and continue his reign of terror. If the system had acted sooner, would Meshay still be laughing with her daughter? Would Layla still be dancing in her mom's TikTok videos instead of worrying about what color her backpack should be for school? These are the questions that haunt those who remain.
They are horribly undertrained in domestic violence. They know laws, but they don't know a perpetrator, they don't know the characteristics of a perpetrator, and they don't know what they do to a victim.
For Misha's family, the pain will never go away. Her mother desperately searched for her daughter and granddaughter, and now has to bury them. The house that was once filled with Layla's laughter is now silent. The joy she once brought gone forever. But this was not only a loss for her family, it was a loss for the entire community. As people in Vancouver gathered to mourn and light candles in memory of Meshay and Layla, their faces filled with sadness, but also quiet, burning anger.
7 years was all I had. And it's all because of Kirkland Warren. And I want him to suffer every single day.
They not only mourned, they demanded change. The case became a rallying cry, a clear example of how the justice system continues to fail victims of domestic violence. People demanded tougher laws, better protections for victims, and an end to the leniency that allowed monsters like Warren to get away with it. Because if nothing changes, how many more Laylas and Meshas will there be?
We really want to honor the family and make sure they get lots of support for that Layla and her mom is gone.
Close friends with Layla and Meshay. Layla was pretty much my niece. So yeah, this has been very heartbreaking. We hope something changes. We hope that if a victim comes out and they're scared, that the police do way more than what they did for her.
And that brings us to the end of this episode. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Stay safe, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.